Crescent City Steakhouse, a true neighborhood restaurant operated by the Vojkovic family since 1934, is the oldest steakhouse in the city of New Orleans. Serving only hand-cut, prime-aged, corn-fed beef for over 80 years, Crescent City Steakhouse has become a dining destination for both die-hard locals and adventurous travelers who seek traditional, timeless New Orleans cuisine. Crescent City Steakhouse, 1001 North Broad, on the corner of St. Philip, in the heart of New Orleans. So here's the bottom line. Well, it's funny that you say that. Let me tell you. Good evening, and welcome to Primetime Sports. Hey, Happy New Year. It's 2018, and I hope everyone had a great Christmas and got all the presents you wanted. And please, keep warm right now during these record cold temperatures. It is cold outside, but it is warm in here, and we're going to have a great show for you. And as good as it has been for the Saints and the LSU Tiger football team for the last 2 or 3 months, well, this weekend was rough. But we'll get to that in a second. But as far as what happened last night right here in New Orleans in the Sugar Bowl, one of the 2 college semifinal games was played last night in the Dome, and it was a rematch. We've known the last 2 title games, it was Alabama versus Clemson. Well, this time, the 1 versus 4 seed met in the semifinal. And I got to tell you, I tried to warn people, when you give Saban a month to prepare and he's got revenge on his mind, bad things happen. Ask LSU and Les Miles. And it did again last night. It was ugly. It was like a python strangling his prey, and that's what happened with the Alabama defense. They were all over Kelly Bryant and the Clemson Tigers. It was a slow death, 24-6. But how about the big fella right there, 94, Daron Payne. He was all over the field. He got the interception. There's a touchdown catch even on offense. He was the star of the game in a game of many stars. So congrats to Bama. Their opponent, well, that was the Rose Bowl game last night. They're going to play the winner. Well, we know it now. It's Georgia. Georgia-Oklahoma. You saw it. Oklahoma had a 31-14 lead. One of the most exciting games you'll ever see. Well, Georgia came back. They set some records in the process. They won in double overtime, 54-48. How about this? Sony Michel. He's been second fiddle to Nick Chubb his entire career. 4 touchdowns. He was the MVP in that game. He and Chubb combined for 6 total touchdowns in the Rose Bowl. They had a Rose Bowl record for duo. And they also set a career record, both those guys, Chubb and Michelle, breaking Eric Dickerson and how about Craig James? Remember the Pony Express back in the early 80s? Well, they set the career duo record. Now, on to LSU. Yep, we were looking for a 10-win season down here in the Bayou under Ogeron, and then the Matt Canada drama came around. You know it. You've heard it. Matt Canada, is he staying or is he going? Apparently, he is probably not staying. But they trailed 3-0 at the half after 2 short field goals LSU missed. LSU did come alive in the second half, guys. You know, he had those 2 touchdowns. He almost had a third, but he was stopped at the goal line. They had a review. They settled for a field goal, and then you know the rest. Miles Boykin had one of the best catches and runs that you'll see against the Tigers in history. They got the victory. LSU is left with a lot of questions. Hey, the Saints, they lose a stunner to the Bucs, 31-24. But still win the NFC South. They're going to host the Panthers this weekend. But how about Alvin Kamara and Mark Ingram set an NFL record for 2 players having 1,500 yards from scrimmage? It has never happened in the history of the NFL. Congrats. Drew Brees set a record for completion percentage. Congrats to him as well. They are getting ready for the playoffs. It's going to be exciting. As far as the Pels, we're going to talk about all that more. I've got Bryan Bienemy, first time ever on the show. He's going to talk. He's from ESPN. We're going to have so much fun. I've got former Final Four coach John Brady. We're going to talk about the LSU Tiger basketball team. Current coach UNO from Mark Slessinger. We're going to talk about what's happening on the lakefront. But, man, we're going to get deep into the Saints, deep into LSU, deep into the Pels. It's going to be fun. NFC South, 3 teams in the playoffs this week. We'll cover it here next on Primetime Sports. Good evening. Welcome back to Primetime Sports. Hey, by the way, that was E.T. from Dirty Dozen Brass Band, one of my favorite musicians, and prayers are with my man E.T., whose son passed away in New York last week. So we got you. Support your brass bands here in New Orleans. They are one of our treasures. Hey, speaking of treasures, and speaking of a guy that knows New Orleans and knows Louisiana, because he was the former basketball coach at LSU from 1997 to 2008. He took LSU to a Final Four in 2006 where they beat Duke and Texas to get all the way over there. And by the way, if you're under 30, he's the only Final Four coach you know from LSU, because Dale Brown did it in '86 last, and John did it in 2006, like I said. But he is now broadcasting the Tiger basketball team with Chris Blair. And here he is right now to talk about the LSU Tigers. Welcome back, buddy.
Go Tigers.
That's right. Last week we'd had 15
Happy New
straight
Year, by
weeks.
the way.
Happy New Year to you. And we talked about LSU and college basketball for 15 weeks. But right now, today, we're going to talk the Tigers, because this has been a little bit of a start that I don't think a lot of fans expected. But right now, tell me what's going on with the LSU Tiger basketball team.
Well, they're 9-3.
Yeah.
They had a good win in Memphis last week before the holiday, before the New Year's. And I tell you what he's trying to do. He's trying to change the culture. He's getting the team to think, and I agree with this totally, that the cornerstones of any successful team is rebounding and defending. And that's what he's building his team upon. He's holding them accountable for that.
I think I've heard that from you a few times.
He's holding them accountable for that, and I think that's how improvement's taking place here. And with a 9-3 record, they lost a little game at home, but everybody else they've beaten. They've had the good wins. You know, Michigan's a good win now. Houston's a good win.
Sure.
And now the recent win over Memphis, and
Right.
with the Wildcats coming to town, you know, who knows what might happen there in the Assembly Center.
Well, they got momentum going, and that's the thing. A fan base is actually getting fired up for this game. Remember last year, you were well aware, you weren't calling the games back then, but the fans just dropped off the earth after a long losing streak. Will Wade has energized this program.
Well, he hasn't made a misstep with the fans or with the players or how he's trying to play. They recognize improvement of the team, and what I've noticed in the short time that he's been there, these players have improved through the first 12 games. And I think that's a sign of good coaching, is when you can readily see improvement in the players and their development.
Before we get to the players and their development, I want to talk about your new gig. I mean, we had you on before the season. Now you've been doing this for 2 months. What's it like being off the coaching seat and in the broadcasting seat? Do you want to call a play occasionally?
Not really. And I'm not there to judge Will Wade. I'm there to help him and explain to the fans. And I work with a real pro in Chris Blair. He's great to work with. He's been really good to me. And I'll tell you the thing that I really enjoy about it. You know, the anxiety level is not there because you're not responsible for anything. I'm just talking about what I see. But the thing I like about it is the LSU fans have really been kind to me. They've come by and said hello. And it's really been a good place to be for me at this time in my life, to be able to do something like that and be a part of LSU, which I really want them to do well and want Will Wade to be successful and not only go to a Final Four, but win the whole thing.
Yeah, and even though you're calling LSU games, every game they have on the radio, you're a free agent. You're still doing other games. I sat behind you and you did one of the Tulane games. And you speak of anxiety levels. I noticed watching across the court, Mike Dunleavy was just stressed about every call, and John Brady's just sitting there calling the game. I'm like, John's loving this side of life.
But I'll say this, Mike Dunleavy's doing a good job.
He's doing a great job.
That team has shown improvement from last year to this year, and you got to credit him for that, because they're really playing pretty good here.
I mean, the whole state right now is looking pretty good. I had Dunleavy on the show last week. We're also going to have UNO's coach Mark Slessinger on this one. But the bottom line is, basketball in South Louisiana is alive. I mean, you're talking about from the Raging Cajuns to Southeastern, who beat Stephen F. Austin.
That's right.
Obviously, UNO, Tulane, LSU. There's some excitement going on around here for basketball.
Well, Bob Marlin is favored to win the Sun Belt, and he may do it. And he's got a good team, been a good coach for years. And then Southeastern does beat Stephen F., who did upset LSU in Baton Rouge. So it is a positive upswing for basketball in the state. And I think they have some good coaches at the different schools in the state also.
Yeah, and I don't want to leave out Louisiana Tech Nichols, because a lot of these schools, McNeese, they're all playing good basketball. Hey, but let's talk about LSU.
Okay.
I was worried, obviously, after last season, like all of us were. It was kind of a mass exodus out. We're like, who's going to be there? Well, there's a guy, I'm not saying he's Chris Jackson, but there's a guy that's electric in my opinion. He seems so smooth when he has the ball. He's the freshman, Tremont Waters. We talked about him before the season, but I have been extremely impressed with this young man.
He's been unbelievable, unconscious. And I'll say this too. I credit Will Wade for this.
Okay.
You know, as a freshman, a talented freshman point guard, he allows him to play. he takes some shots sometimes that may be ill-advised, but he also makes a bunch of ill-advised shots at the same time. And not only is he a good offensive player, he's equally as good in passing the ball and seeing the floor. And if he'd have played for me, I'd have probably restricted him too much and tried to hold him back. But Will Wade understands what he has. He lets him play, and he's been remarkable the first 12 games.
As great as he has been on offense, because he is like a poor man's Chris Jackson, in my opinion. Maybe, obviously nobody's that guy, but the defense has been a little surprising too. He got the game-winning block against Houston, which I think we have some shots of, which was pretty remarkable. I didn't think the kid had the leaps in him.
Well, he got off the floor about 3 or 4 feet, it looked like to me, in that block when he really sealed the game with that block.
Right.
But also the other night when they played North Florida, I told Coach Wade on the air that I thought that was the first time I've really seen him be excited about defending somebody. And he's bringing him along defensively. And if he can equal defensively what he's accomplished so far to this point offensively, that's a great combo for your point guard to have. He's going to be a real exciting player for LSU to build around the next 3 or 4 years.
Well, how does he compare to the great players around the country, like the great young players? We know at LSU the talent's a little bit of a dearth of talent there right now, but he's going to be great there. But if he went to, say, a Duke or something, would he just be another player? I mean, how good is he?
Well, I think from an offensive standpoint, he would separate himself and be as good as some of those players.
Right.
The thing I want to see happen to him is when we get into Southeastern Conference play, with his size, he's 5'10" or so, he's 165, 170 pounds. I want to see defensively how he reacts, and also offensively to a little more physical, stronger player throughout the course of a 16 or 18 game conference schedule.
Hey, one guy that has benefited from his presence is the other guard, because last year the jury was out for me with Skylar Mays, obviously the guard from U-High that came in, but teaming up with Waters in the backcourt has really helped him blossom as well.
Well, when I had lunch with Coach Wade a couple of times when he got the job, he asked me what I thought, and I said, well, there's 2 things. You need a power guy around the basket who can throw it to him and get fouled or get a basket or both, and then you need a point guard. I like Skylar Mays. I like him better off the ball, and since Tremont Waters has been there, Skylar Mays is a much better basketball player.
No question.
He's okay at the point from time to time to let Waters go to the bench and get a rest, which he needs to at some parts of the game. But as a 2 guard, he can shoot it well. He's really good at driving it to the basket. Defensively, he's gotten better because of Will Wade and the urging that he's put on him from a coaching standpoint. And I like Skylar Mays' game. I think he's a key to that team, as is Brandon Sampson.
Yeah, and before we get to any players, I want to ask you about your former player, obviously a guy that was a freshman on that Final Four team, Tasman Mitchell. He's now a coach with, obviously, Will Wade. How's that transition from player to coach going for your former pupil?
Well, if there's one guy, a former player that Will Wade could have hired that's popular, that's loyal to LSU, that loves being there, it's Tasman Mitchell. He made a smart move in bringing him on. It's helped Will Wade connect with former players, even some fans that still, hold Tasman in high regard.
Yes.
So it's a smart move by Will Wade to bring Tasman on board. I like seeing him every day, or most every day.
He's got that big smile every time you see him. He's universally loved.
He's glad to be there. He loves LSU. He was a great hire for Will Wade.
All right, so the rest of the players, the first 2 we mentioned, Skylar Mays and obviously Tremont Waters, they both averaged 30-plus minutes. What I found interesting with LSU, you have 7 or 8 more guys that average no less than 17 minutes, no more than 21. So he's got a rotation of guys in there. And when I mention that group, who are the first couple that come to mind for you?
Well, Brandon Sampson's a guy I like. And I think Reith is very important around the goal, as is Epps. If those 2 guys can hold their own defensively around the basket, I think LSU will be fine. Now, I'm not saying LSU's going to win the league or they're going to go to the NCAA tournament. I'm saying they're going to show improvement and be better. But I think Brandon Sampson, from a health standpoint, which he's come off the high ankle sprain now, I think the more he gets involved with that team, he and Skylar Mays on the wing are good players with Tremont Waters at the point.
No, I mean, listen, when LSU was picked 14th, I don't think anybody in the LSU fan base was surprised because they saw what happened last year. But you flat out told me that day, you said there's no way they're going to be 14th. And obviously that's become a popular refrain with announcers. I noticed in the Memphis game, those guys were saying to Pete Gillen. But the bottom line is this: how did you know? Because did you have a feeling these guys would come together like this? Because nobody else had any idea.
Well, I liked the wings last year. that he had. And I think with the new coaching staff and the emphasis on defending and rebounding, and then I've had the privilege of going up and watching them practice early and watching them work out. I saw Waters and how good he could possibly be. And when they've come together now and have watched them play and practice, I just felt like if they're the 14th team in the league's really good. So I think with what they've done with the 3 quality wins they've had to this point, I think they're going to be better than that, obviously. And what I don't want to do is LSU fans sometimes have a tendency to get ahead of themselves.
Yeah.
And I don't want them to think this team is there yet. They're not there yet. They're going to develop. They're going to get better. And that's what you're going to see with some accountability for poor play. And Will Wade does that. That's why his team's going to get better as the year goes along.
Well, we're kind of be people excited for all college basketball, but this particular segment, I want people excited about LSU. They play their first conference game tomorrow. That's Kentucky. That's a tough one to open up with. They're at home. They're known for having great big men all the way through. Boogie Cousins recently, AD. We could go on and on about the number 1 picks. Duop Reith is pretty much the main big guy LSU's got. How is he going to hold his own against the thoroughbreds that Kentucky's going to throw at him?
Well, I think that's the key. I think what LSU will do is what they've been doing. They'll play some man-to-man. They will double down on the post from time to time defensively. Yeah. They will change some defense. Will Wade's gone from a high extended 1-3-1 to a 2-3 zone to a 3-quarter court press, fall back into man-to-man, play zone, change some defense, try to keep Kentucky off a rhythm of offense. And if they can do that, LSU has had the knack to score the ball through their first 12 games. Should be an interesting game. It's at home. There's going to be a nice crowd there. I'm excited about sitting there and calling the game with Chris Blair.
Yeah. And by the way, y'all call a easy game to listen to. And that's on 870 down in New Orleans. I know it's on 98.1 if you're along the coast and Baton Rouge, of course, Lafayette area. But it's all over the state, and you can check it out. But I want to talk about some of the players that I'm seeing getting 18, 19 minutes that a lot of people don't know about. And one of them people may know about more than others is Aaron Epps. We kind of touched on him. Why is he important to the mix on this team?
Well, he's a big guy that can move out on the floor and stretch the defense. Aaron Epps can step back and make a 3. He's okay around the basket. He's better at driving it to the goal than catching it with his back to the basket. But he has a knack for making a 3 from time to time. And if he can be consistent from the 3, I'm not talking about make them all. I'm not talking about shooting 45%. But if he can shoot around the 35% number from the 3-point line, it brings another added dimension to the perimeter play for LSU.
All right, the rest of the bench, guys that come in and play, like the Wade Sims, who's Wayne Sims' son. If you're from the 80s, you remember Wayne Sims on some of those great LSU teams. His son Wade, obviously from U-High. And you got Brandon Rashall, the freshman. Also Brandon Edwards?
Yeah, Edwards. Yeah.
Darrell Edwards, my bad.
Junior college player.
Yeah, a couple of brands. We have Sampson and Rashall, hard to keep. But Darrell Edwards. Talk about that mix and what they mean for the LSU team.
Well, all of those guys have had moments of good play for LSU through the first 12 games. And Will Wade has done a nice job of substituting in the right way, finding out who's playing well, who's not playing well, holding those particular players accountable for defensive lapses. And he's done a nice job of being able to tell who's playing well and who's not, and that's why they've spread the minutes out outside of those first top couple of players.
Yeah, you're at the tip-off club today. That's kind of a once-a-month type thing. LSU fans are getting behind this team?
Absolutely. I believe it's going to be a tough ticket for the Kentucky game on Wednesday. Looking forward to calling the game. Will Wade's done a great job to this point. No telling what might happen in the Mavericks Assembly Center Monday night against the Wildcats.
Wednesday night.
Yes.
By the way, it might be a tough ticket for most folks, but if you know John Brady, it might not be as hard. Give him a call. He might help you out. By the way, you're on your magical mystery tour of food places this weekend. You started on Friday. You went through yesterday. How many LBs did you do? Because you literally went to about 8 restaurants in 3 or 4 days.
I've got to get back on the workout routine, man, because I had some friends come in from Alabama that went to the game, and I had them lined up with 3 or 4 real quality restaurants here, and we ate our way through New Orleans the last 3 days.
You did it right, too, and I joined you for one of those.
That's right.
Fantastic voyage right there. You've been on this ball. We'll see you again. I know you're a little busier than you were last year, so I know you can't come every show, but we'll catch up with you every few weeks and catch up with what's going on in college basketball.
Love to do it.
Appreciate you, man. We're not done with basketball. We're going to catch it later, but I got a first-timer coming up. I told you there's a lot of information. I said that in the open about what's going on. The Saints, obviously, are in the playoffs. They play Carolina this Sunday. You've got the whole NFC South basically almost in the playoffs. Other than Tampa Bay, everybody's in. Saints play Carolina, like I said, and Atlanta plays Saturday night against the Rams. Well, I've got a guy coming up next who is the NFC South expert. He does this, contributing with ESPN. Been doing it for years with Gus Cattingill over there at the Sports Hangover. We're going to talk all about the Saints coming up. We're going to talk about what's going on in college football as well, those playoff semifinals. And we're also going to talk about the New Orleans Pelicans. His name is Bryan Bienemy. Bryan, I've seen Bienemy, and Bienemy is me. That's a Chris Berman thing. So he's going to come up next right here on Primetime Sports. Don't forget, we're also going to have Mark Slessinger, UNO's coach, who's now on a little roll after having a hard schedule in the offseason and the pre-conference. Now they're 2-0. He knows what he's doing, and he's going to be following up right here on Primetime Sports.
The owners of the Delachaise Wine Bar on St. Charles Avenue have opened up their newest creation uptown on Maple Street called Chez Delachaise, a new local wine bistro featuring a larger menu of small and large plates, a brighter atmosphere, and full table service. Additionally, patrons can enjoy a large patio out front as well as an extensive wine list offering selections from around the world. It's Chez Delachaise, 7708 Maple Street between Carrollton and Broadway.
Rock and roll will never die. It's old New Orleans, my, oh my. Come on, baby, let's go rock and roll at the city lane. All night, let's roll, let's rock and roll. Baby, do the rock and roll. At mid-city lanes, the home of rock and roll.
Fall in love with autumn with PJ's new seasonal lattes. Our pumpkin latte brings you all the flavors of a pumpkin pie with hints of cinnamon and nutmeg, like your favorite holiday dessert in a cup. And our s'mores latte with flavors of toasted marshmallows, warm milk chocolate, and graham cracker cinnamon is sure to bring back campfire memories. The PJ's Fall Seasonal Lattes, available at your local PJ's only for a limited time.
Welcome back to Primetime Sports. I got to thank my man John Brady. We had him 15 straight weeks as our basketball analyst. Like I said earlier, he's not going to be able to come every show, but he's going to come when he can because now he's calling those LSU games. And don't forget, we're not done with basketball yet because I have UNO's head coach, Mark Slessinger. He's coming back. Usually you get these coaches before and after the season. Well, some of them are coming in season. You saw we had Mike Dunleavy last week. Will Wade has said he's going to come on during the season as well, and Mark Slessinger. So we're also going to be getting other coaches around the state. I talked to Coach Ladner at Southeastern. He's coming up soon. They had that big win over Stephen F. Austin last week. But we're going to talk football now because that's the bread and butter down south, particularly the New Orleans Saints. And I've got a treat for you because if you are on Twitter and you follow the New Orleans scene, you probably know this guy. If you listen to the radio, particularly ESPN radio with Gus Cattingill and Sports Hangover, you definitely know him. His name is Bryan Bienemy. You might not know that name, but you definitely know Bryan from New Orleans East because he was a caller for a long time, and then he became a contributor, and he's doing great things over there. And this is his first time on TV. And I'm going to tell you what, if you are on Twitter, you have to follow him at Bryan with a Y, TNR. I believe that's it, right? That is. It is, Bryan. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Scotty.
I'm so flattered that you're here. I appreciate your first time on TV coming on Primetime Sports.
Man, couldn't have been a better time right now, especially with everything going on with the NFC South, and I really appreciate you reaching out for me to come on.
Yeah, by the way, this is a perfect scenario for you because you are considered the NFC South expert. How does one get that moniker?
Basically, it's somebody that tells you don't study anything else but the NFC South, and
right.
it kind of goes along with the territory from there.
Yeah, I mean, you've been contributing with the Sports Hangover on ESPN with Gus for about 7 years. Kind of give people an idea how that got started.
Well, Gus started off the show, the Sports Hangover, him with Larry Holder, who is now with NOLA.com,
sure,
and doing big things in radio as well. They started off in 2011 with the Sports Hangover. I was a caller of the show. Afterwards, after a few times, they were like, hey, you know what? If we ever have an opening, we'll bring you on. And years later, here we are.
Well, you were made for Twitter, by the way. There's just very few people that I'll go check just to see what they've said that day. And I don't say I do it every day, but like guys like Amin El Hassan from ESPN National, he does the basketball stuff. But you have a way on Twitter. If somebody needs to be cut down to their knees, you can do it, and you bring some solid points. Talk about your whole Twitter run.
My Twitter rants are pretty epic at this point. They go, I'm trying to do it all in good fun.
Right.
Sometimes I can get a little dirty with it.
You got to.
By and large, I try to just make sure I'm informative and I'm honest. And I think if you do that when it comes to Twitter handles, especially with sports talk, people will respect it.
And you're knowledgeable too. I mean, you got to have that too. You can't cut people at the knees if you don't have the backing, and you obviously do that. But let's start there. Our New Orleans Saints, obviously, if you go back before the season, you said, hey, 11-5, win the NFC South. I think most fans would feel pretty great about that. But going into the playoffs, kind of like the Super Bowl year where they lost 3 in a row, they've lost 3 of the last 6, including the last game against Tampa. Any reason for worry?
Not at all. I think at this point, it's going to be hyperbole. You're going to hear things almost like we did during the 2009 season. Well, no team has ever lost their last 3 regular season games, went on to win a Super Bowl. Well, stats are cool until you play the games. And I think at this point, that's all it comes down to. There are going to be no secrets in this game. Carolina knows the Saints. Saints know Carolina. You can pretty much throw the playbooks out the window. It's going to come down to execution. Whoever can execute, that's who's going to win it.
We're going to get into Saints Carolina, but since you said stats are cool, I happen to agree with you because the Saints have some amazing ones this year. And when you talk about the rookie Alvin Kamara, who, by the way, added a kickoff return against Tampa to his resume, which is already glistening, over 1,500 yards from scrimmage, 14 total touchdowns, 8 on the ground, 5 through the air, and now the kickoff return. He is the Swiss Army knife that the Saints have not had since Darren Sproles.
Absolutely, and I think, the question is always in the NFL, who's must-see TV? Who's that guy that it doesn't matter?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Doesn't matter where you are. Absolutely where you are. You have to watch this guy perform. At one time, it was Michael Vick. Maybe before that, Barry Sanders. It didn't matter what team you rooted for. You definitely wanted to watch those guys play. Well, I think Alvin Kamara is going to be one of those guys. He's going to be one of those guys that you don't want to miss a snap because at any moment he can take it to the house. And he has a variety of ways of doing it, as you said. And
listen, Ingram, his running mate, also, by the way, over 1,500 yards from scrimmage. This is mind-boggling. The NFL has been going on for, 97 years or something? A long time.
Yes.
And they're the only tandem in the history of the league, running back tandem, that has 1,500 yards from scrimmage. Ingram's got 12 rushing touchdowns. This is a lethal backfield. I mean, how did this come about?
I think what it was is it's an underrated Mark Ingram. I mean, he's almost the Saints' leading rusher and leading touchdown getter as far as rushing yards is concerned. So you kind of almost ignore Ingram and his contributions because he's been around for so long, and then you add a dynamic weapon like Kamara, and what you have is the Saints totally changing their offense, which is something we haven't seen in the Drew Brees era. You go from let's throw the ball 40 times a game with Drew Brees to, maybe let's temper that down to 30 times a game and rush these guys and get them some touches. And, now you have a formula for success that's not only built to win now, also in the playoffs, but definitely in the future as well.
And it's perfect for Brees at this end of his career because, listen, I mean, the guy could probably throw 5,000 yards like he's done 5 times if he needed to, but he's thrown for 4,300 yards. For most quarterbacks, that'd be great. That's the lowest he's had since he's been with the Saints. 23 touchdowns, the lowest he's been with the Saints. But only 8 interceptions, so he's being efficient with what he does. And not only is he helping the Saints go far in the playoffs with the running game and all that, it's probably adding to his career.
Absolutely, and if you look at it, I mean, you're going to say, okay, well, the numbers are down as far as Drew Brees is concerned because we're used to seeing him give like this superhuman effort. Better for him that he is this way because it's going to be longevity for his career, as you stated. Also, he doesn't have the pressure on him to win games now. Believe me, I think the Drew Brees that we know that can win a game is still there. We saw that in the Washington game when he had to, 11 for 11 going down the stretch. And, I mean, he was money at that time. Love what Drew's doing right now as far as not putting the pressure on himself to win games, but using the guys that are around him.
I mean, it seems like we hear a new record for Brees every game. I mean, it was against the Jets. He's one of 3 quarterbacks now over 70,000 yards. It's mind-boggling. It's him, Manning, and Favre. This time, he did us all a favor because he took Sam Bradford out of any NFL record book. We don't need Sam Bradford holding NFL records, and he did at 71.6%. He had the highest completion mark in NFL history. That was last year, and thank goodness Brees took that. He just broke the record. He has 72% passes. Now, granted, I know he's throwing a lot of shorter passes. That's still remarkable.
Absolutely, and let's not forget that Drew can still get it downfield. I know there's a few times that he'll miss going to Ted Ginn down deep, but, I mean, for the most part, he's still throwing the ball deep. He's still connecting with a guy like Mike Thomas, who's been an absolute monster his first 2 years.
Just a monster.
So, I mean, if you look at what he's doing, Drew is still Drew. The only thing that I think was going on with Saints fans and media is that we're so used to seeing Drew just do above and beyond what he has to.
I got it. Before I get off Tampa and onto the Carolina game, I've got to say this. Dirk Cutter at the end. If you haven't seen it, Google this up. Dirk Cutter and Sean Payton after the game. It looks friendly there, and you see the hand on there. that looks friendly in the picture. That's more like a jab. I mean, if you could cut her shirt off, I guarantee you there's red welts because Peyton and him had a little bit of interaction after the game.
Absolutely. I mean, at this point, as you see on the screen right now, I mean, you'll see Sean Payton kind of do it, but that wasn't a hey, how you doing? Great game. This was like, nah, stay away from me. I don't want you to touch me type of thing. And I like to see it because it means the old Sean Payton is back, the one that we all saw with the fire and the passion, and the guy that would definitely be petty enough to drop 62 points on you and not even care about it. Or if it's, you're up by 20.
The Colts game you're talking about? That Sunday night game?
Of course. The 62, and not to mention last year when he played the Rams, and, when you're up by 20 and you're still throwing a fake reverse touchdown with Willie Snead. So, I mean, that's the Sean Payton that we all love, and I think that's the Sean Payton that's back now.
Be petty, Sean. We love it.
We love petty Sean.
All right. Oh, by the way, now we got to talk about the big game. It's a marquee game. It's the last playoff game in the wild card. It's Sunday afternoon. They play the Panthers. You know the Panthers, honestly, as well as anybody. When you think of Panthers, you think of one guy, Cam Newton, but you also think of defense and you think of a lot of other things. When you think of Panthers, what comes to your mind?
I think about the 3-time division champs, and I think everybody's going to kind of run with it and say, you know what, the Saints have won the 2 games this year by a pretty open margin, which is great. But this is still the Carolina Panthers that we're talking about. It's still Cam Newton, and the offense changed for Carolina going into the offseason, coming into this season. They wanted to go to a more of a quick strike offense. Well, they saw that wasn't working real quick, and they went back to Cam being Cam.
Right.
Now you're seeing Cam Newton run the ball. You're seeing him trying to get that ground game back going, and they're playing good defense behind it. That's Carolina football in a nutshell.
And he seems more relaxed. I mean, listen, quarterbacks can be testy, and they're under a microscope, and you've seen him come unhinged. I don't know if it's just me. Maybe it's just the last few weeks. I've seen he's handling it more like a duck with water off his back when he gets criticism. What are you seeing?
I believe exactly that's what's going on. I think early in the year, especially when you think about the down year that he came off of, and they were just in a Super Bowl prior to, so him having a down year afterwards. And now Cam has just got, he's kind of got this nonchalant attitude, like, you know what, I'm just going to go out and play. No matter if we're up by 20 or down by 20, I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure we win. And we'll see what happens afterwards. And it looks like they've got a good formula going.
And, the formula, it's interesting because they traded their top wide receiver during the season, obviously, when Benjamin got traded to the Bills. And then Greg Olsen's out. So you're talking about his favorite 2 weapons are out. And for some reason, they still continue to pile up victories. I think there's 2 things here. Christian McCaffrey adds a weapon to them that they didn't have before because, they were power team, and now he gives you a kind of a Reggie Bush's type player that can do things like that. But the defense is always going to be the defense.
Of course, and that's what Carolina's going to always be. They're going to be a defensive team. They're going to be a smash-mouth team. And you have guys like Luke Kuechly and Thomas Davis who absolutely are, probably the 2 best linebackers in the game.
Love those 2 guys.
Yeah, if Luke Kuechly isn't the best middle linebacker in football, then I think we need to reevaluate who is and what is, because that guy's an absolute monster. His smarts would take him far past what I think other guys are capable of. Carolina's going to be a problem. I can't necessarily say they're going to win the game, but they're going to give the Saints a fight this time.
Oh, they're definitely going to give them a fight. And by the way, Thomas Davis, I think he's been playing since the Clinton administration. It seems like he's been around a long time. All right, you're NFC South, so we got to talk about the Dirty Birds, the Falcons. They did get into the playoffs. They did what they had to do. Seattle lost anyway, but they beat Carolina, and now they're going to face the Rams, who are one of the most surprising teams in the league. How do you see this game turning out over there in L.A.?
If the Atlanta Falcons don't come back to doing what got them to the point that they were last year, I guess a quarter away from being a Super Bowl champion, if they don't find that formula again, they'll get blown out by the Rams and it won't even be close because Jared Goff and that Rams defense, they're going to do some things that Atlanta hasn't seen. It's good when you can play a Saints team that has a high-powered offense or you play a Carolina team that's going to be smash-mouth. Well, the Rams are both. So you can't just get away with that. If Matt Ryan and the running game is going to be the key here. If Matt Ryan and the running game don't get on the same page as to where you can kind of dink and dunk a little bit, maybe get the running game going and then try to go to Julio Jones, they'll get blown out.
Todd Gurley's the key here. If you somehow slow him down, you're not going to stop him. Then you put it into the first-year starter's hands, Jared Goff, who's had a fantastic year. But still, this is playoffs. Matt Ryan has been in the Super Bowl. I think that's what makes this game interesting because if you can slow Gurley, then I think the quarterback edge, even though Ryan hadn't had a great year, I think I would give him the edge over the young guy. But as far as the other teams that get buys in the NFC, we know the Minnesota Vikings is going to be a bear. Their quarterback is Case Keenum. Everybody talks about, hey, you got to love the edge that the Saints would have whoever they play because they have Drew Brees and nobody else does. But the Eagles seem to be the team most vulnerable now because Carson Wentz is out. Do you see it that way?
Absolutely. I mean, Carson Wentz was basically the NFL MVP this year. So there's no way possible that team couldn't have been considered a Super Bowl contender with him at the helm.
Agreed.
Well, now Nick Foles is Nick Foles, and there's a reason why Nick Foles was backing up Carson Wentz. Has he had success in the NFL? Absolutely. But is he Carson Wentz? No, he's not. And I think if the Eagles' defense lets them down in any way, shape, or form, the Eagles will be one and done.
I'm going to tell you this. I've been impressed with the Eagles all season long, but I've been more impressed with Carson Wentz. That guy, he has sold me. He's the real deal. AFC, it's Patriots or Steelers. Any dark horse there?
No, I think Jacksonville may be a dark horse.
Sure, good point.
Because that defense is for real. And, of course, as everybody here in Louisiana knows, Leonard Fournette is superhuman. And I think he's the difference maker. If Blake Bortles doesn't just basically go Blake Bortles, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars have a chance to make a little bit of noise, and it could possibly be a surprise to
and until the last couple of games, Bortles has actually been playing great, but I am rooting for Leonard for sure. College football last night, any thoughts on Bama's crushing over Clemson? And then obviously the game of the whole bowl season to me was Oklahoma and Georgia. What are your thoughts?
Alabama is who they are. They are a boa constrictor on defense. They will basically suck the life out of you until there's nothing left. And then afterwards, they'll just run straight over you.
That is a term I used yesterday at the game. I'm like, this feels like I'm at a game where there's a snake just putting around your neck, and slowly you're just passing out so you can't do anything anymore.
And that's exactly what it looked like. Clemson tried everything they could, and even when they were close, on a cusp of just doing something great, Alabama took it right from them. Of course, the Georgia game versus Oklahoma.
How great was that?
That saved college football to me because it was that good. I mean, don't get me wrong.
They were down 17 points, and everybody's flipping the channels, and all of a sudden, that running back combination, 6 touchdowns with Chubb and Sony Michel. Do they have a shot against Bama? Of course they have a shot. But Nick Saban's a psycho when he loses the year before. He's coming back. He's looking for blood.
Absolutely. You're going to hear, ad nauseum on how many times a former Nick Saban assistant coach has gone up against him. And how
Kirby Smart.
Yeah, Kirby Smart being another one of those. And Nick Saban is 11-0 in those games. Well, Kirby Smart just may have what it takes to get it done because he has a freshman quarterback that is not afraid of the spotlight. Kind of sounds familiar. Jalen Hurts on the Alabama side.
Stud,
you have a running game that's almost superior to anybody else.
As good as anybody in college.
Exactly. And you have a great defense that can stop people when they need to, as we saw yesterday. It kind of shut Oklahoma down for a while, but Baker Mayfield is Baker Mayfield for a reason. So I can't wait to see this game. I think it's going to be a slugfest, and surprisingly, I don't think it's going to be a defensive game. I think this is going to be an offensive game between the two.
And now, something that's near and dear to our hearts, we're both basketball guys too, the Pelicans. They get y'all excited. They went 3 in a row. You're like, oh my God, you look at the schedule. They got Dallas at home and New York Knicks. Hey, we're going to win 5 in a row, be 20-16. And they get behind big in those games. Furious comebacks that fall short. They're 18-18 into the new year. Your thoughts?
The Pelicans are the Pelicans. And unfortunately, I'm not going to blame it on Alvin Gentry. I'm not going to blame it on Dell Demps in the front office. I'm going to blame it where it solely becomes, relevant. It's on the fans. We have to demand more. The media, we have to demand more because until we demand more, the Pelicans are going to be just what they are. They're going to be an also-ran. They're going to be a team that has so much talent but never gets the job done because they're not the Saints. Basically, right now, unfortunately for me, it looks as if the Pelicans are just a placeholder until the Saints come back. When the front office, the fans, the media, everybody in this city gets to the point to where they are just as angry when the Pelicans lose as they are when the Saints lose, we'll see a difference.
I wanted your opinion. They're 18-18. What record would make you feel they're on the right track at the end of the season?
At the end of the season, they have to be at least 5 to 7 games above 500.
45-37 is kind of where I was thinking.
Exactly. I think that's where they should be because they're on a cusp. They're not just there yet, but they have the talent. You have 2 of the best bigs in the league. You have a great point guard in Rajon Rondo who understands, and Drew Holiday, surprisingly, and now at the shooting guard spot, is playing a lot better. So you have the talent. The problem is just going to be, what are you doing when you give those lazy efforts?
This is my point. It's just when I think they're turning the corner because it takes time for a guy like Rondo who missed the first, 11 so games, whatever it was, to get accustomed to the team. And I'm like, okay, they're on the 3-game winning streak. They have had no winning streaks more than 3 games. But this is their opportunity. And then it's so maddening because right when you think they're there, they take the 2 steps back. So now the new year, I'm optimistic. I'm always optimistic. So I'm holding out hope because I feel that with this talent, they could be one of these teams that goes on a 7-8 game win streak, and then all of a sudden we'll be forgetting about all the woes. But deep down, the woes are still there.
Absolutely, and I would love to be able to be on the same page with you and say, yeah, the Pelicans are going to go 7-8 games. But you know what? I think it's going to be what it is. They'll win 3 or 4 in a row, get our hopes all high, and then they'll lose 1 or 2 and kind of make you mad because it'll be a team that they should have beaten. It scares me the ending of the season. That's when they'll play the better teams, the San Antonio Spurs again, your Golden States, your Oklahoma City Thunder. That's what scares me. If they don't get ahead now, the end of the season could be real bad for the Pelicans.
All right, I'm feeling good. I can't believe this is this dude's first time on TV because this ain't going to be his last. I'm going to tell you this, and I'm glad that I had him first. So I'm honored that you were here.
Thank you
so much.
And I
think your future is bright, man. I'm in your corner. A little gift certificate. This will get you started for a little
awesome,
place called Shea Sell Shays. And we got to get you on the ball. Got to get you right here on the Bobby Hebert ball. We got a bunch of Saints balls. We're going to pop you right here in the media area. His name is Bryan. Hey, I've seen Bienemy, and Bienemy is me.
It is.
That's my favorite one from Eric Bienemy, from Chris Berman. But he's great. Check him out. He will be on, obviously, with the playoffs this week. I'm sure Gus is going to have him on. The Sports Hangover, that's ESPN Radio in New Orleans. But coming up next, we're going to go back to basketball. I love when I get D1 coaches during the season. That doesn't happen all the time. And Mark Slessinger is coming up next. The UNO Privateers, they're doing it again. They started off the Southland Conference 2-0, and they got a big game tomorrow night. He's going to be right here on Primetime Sports. Next.
On the highway in a ghost of glass and steel, I shiver like a banshee at the wheel. Miles to go yet, touch of regret, trouble in my mind. Chase the sunset down behind the Georgia line. I could swing a hammer.
That's my man Aaron Wilkinson from the Honey Island Swamp Band, one of my favorite human beings ever. If you ever get a chance to watch that band, definitely go out. They're always at Jazz Fest and all the events. Hey, I told you we're coming back to basketball. We just talked to my man Bryan Bienemy, and we were all over the Saints playoff potential for this weekend and the rest of the NFC South. But we're going to switch gears back to hoops. I had John Brady on early talking about LSU. And now we're going to go to a head coach that's actually coaching right now. His name is Mark Slessinger. He's been on before. And like I told you before, you don't always get coaches in the middle of the season, but that's what separates Sless from the rest of them. He loves to promote his program, and why not? Hey, they haven't not been in first place in the Southland Conference since this time before last year. That's right, they're 2-0 this year. And you know what they do? They schedule hard out of conference. Get this team ready for conference play. Last year they went 13-5. He is the reigning Southland Coach of the Year, and you know him as Sless, but officially he's Coach Mark Slessinger. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Thank you, Scott. Good to be here as always.
And I generally don't bring coaches back a few months after they just were on, but I like midseason updates. You've had a tough preseason schedule. You go to tough places all the time. You're taking some lumps, but you're playing hard. Talk about that.
You know, we played a top 10 non-conference schedule. We went out and played some really, really tough teams at St. John's, at SMU, which has had a phenomenal year thus far.
Y'all played great, too.
The University of Houston had a great game with Coach Kelvin Sampson and his crew. Mm-hmm. And then, we've gone out and played some really, really tough ones. And I think 8 road games in that non-conference, 3 at home, has really built some toughness within our team. It's kind of helped forge where we're at as a team and where we're going in the direction. And I think you could see us win out 2 close games to start this league. A very, very tough team in Abilene Christian, which I think will be a top 4 team in our league.
Very good team. Yeah.
And then we went to Houston Baptist and won in a very tough environment. But a very huge week to continue this week. It never stops.
Well, last year it was magical. I mean, let's talk about it. Mark Slessinger was on every news show. It was funny. Hey, Sless is here. Sless is in the newspaper. He's in all these TV shows. Now that that's subsided and you're back to this season, what has changed?
Nothing really changed from our day-to-day. Our goal in our ministry, coaching ministry, is always to try to get these guys better every day.
Right.
It's no magic formula besides hard work. I think I was blessed to have great parents that really instilled that into me, that the only thing that really matters is how hard you work. And I think that we have been working to do that every day. I think the attention that we've garnered helped validate what we do and why we do it in our culture within our program, and how people are treated and
right.
how hard the guys play. I think you could see that in our non-conference. We were very, very competitive for a lot of minutes was the way that I looked at it. We didn't get the end result we wanted in a non-conference, but you could see that once we got into conference play, starting out 2-0. But I think that all the attention has been good because it's validated how and why we do things within our program and our culture.
Speaking of validated, when you go out on the recruiting trail, now that you've tasted that success and they know you've been in the tournament. They know you won the conference. They know you're the coach of the year. Do you feel a different validation going out?
It always helps. I think positive news helps anybody. I think there's always a ripple effect on our university side as well, where we've been there and brought good attention to the university, and that's helped our admissions. It's helped spirit on campus. It's helped pride within our alumni base and the huge alumni base here in the New Orleans metro more than anything. And so I think that piece has been good, but it always helps in recruiting. People want to be around a winner. They want to be around people that are moving the right direction. And I think the more we work and the better that we treat people and really work at it, I think we'll continue to have that success and keep growing this. This is a grassroots effort. This isn't an effort or a program where we're going to swoon you with the fanciest of anything. We're going to be genuine. We're going to be real. We're a handshake group and look you eye to eye, and people know what we are, and they like what we do and how we play and how our kids act, and they keep coming back, and our fan base keeps growing and growing and growing a little bit each year.
Well, last year you had a perfect storm of you had the Conference Player of the Year in Eric Thomas, then you had a bunch of 4-year players that contributed for 4 full years, not guys that played a little bit the first year. These are guys, so you were missing a lot coming into the season. One of the questions I had for you before the season was, how was that fifth starter, the only guy coming back, Traven Thibodeau, going to react without his partners with him? And he's reacted pretty well. He's leading the team, double points than anybody else, 16.5 points a game. He's got 7-8 rebounds a game, even 3 assists. He's shooting 55%. So we see that he's become a leader on this team.
He's really done a tremendous job in the offseason. I think credit goes to him, number one, for how hard his work ethic is. And, UNO has a great history of great big men that have been self-starters and really got out and worked, whether it was Irvin Johnson, Wayne Cooper, Liddell.
Talking about some legends.
Michael McDonald, Liddell, all these guys were guys that worked on their own.
If you're under 30, you don't know any of them.
And Traven is another one of those guys. Eric Thomas was another one of those guys. Kevin Hill was another one of those guys. Corey Dixon, that have all played during our time. But he has worked very, very hard, and our staff has done a tremendous job in his skill development. But he's taken shots that are within the framework of what we're doing, which was Eric's formula a year ago. But then he rebounds and plays very, very hard, and he's been very good thus far.
How has he taken the leadership role? Because, listen, you had those guards, Nate Fry, obviously, Kristavius Kill. They were unquestioned leaders on this team. And usually a guard does usually be the leader. This is a big man having to take that role.
We had 8 new guys that came into this program this year, and that's a huge turnover that we did not promote. I think a lot of coaches take the end that they like to promote how young they are and how new they are, and we haven't done that. We got 8 guys. I think our staff did a great job recruiting. And going into the season, I thought our biggest void was our voice. I thought our voice, how those guys that we graduated had great voices. Mm-hmm. And the challenge for Traven McClure, George Matthew Giles from here in Braithwaite, and Michael Zeno was how good could their senior voices be. And I think they're learning, and Traven's kind of taken a big step here in the last 2-3 weeks of his voice has gotten a lot better and been more directive and positive. And I think you could tell that in his game, but I think you could see it in our end result as well.
And by the way, Traven Thibodeau is the player of the week, and this is the first week conference play. And UNO, 2-0 to start, and they got a big game tomorrow night. Obviously, we want to get some fans out there. They play Lamar. Talk about how big this is at the Lakefront Arena.
Lamar's a great program. They're led by former UNO coach Tick Price, who was the Southland Conference or Sun Belt Conference Coach of the Year and led UNO to the NCAA tournament 21 years ago.
Coach Memphis,
and coached at Memphis State, and then at McNeese State as well. But a great team. They were 10-5. They had a great non-conference run. They were picked preseason to win our league. So a team that we know was a great challenge for us, and we're looking forward to locking up with them tomorrow night, and hopefully we've got a great crowd. Last Wednesday night we had a great crowd regardless of the weather. People came out. It was strong. The weather prediction is perfect in Lakefront Arena tomorrow. It'll be dry. It's 72 degrees. No wind. It's going to be a perfect weather for people to come out.
Inside, it's going to be great.
Inside, it'll be perfect. Just come in Lakefront Arena. It'll be perfect.
No, it's the best. As you say, it's the best venue for basketball in the state of Louisiana.
Hands down the best.
Hands down. He's saying hands down it is. By the way, you mentioned one of your big men who I'm enamored with, McCord. He's obviously from Africa. They played at Mooseheart, I believe, up in Canada or something. But how's he progressed this season? Because he's one of my favorite players in your conference, if not my favorite player overall.
Yeah, he has got a huge, tough motor, and I think his off-season development was phenomenal as well. A great indication was he got 2 fouls early in the Abilene Christian game. Yeah. Came back out, ended the second half with 14 points, scored 8 straight, and really set the tone for us to get a big victory there. But just as hard a worker as is, a native of South Sudan.
How'd you find him?
My assistant coach, Bill Dewaney, had helped facilitate him and his brothers getting over to the United States to Mooseheart High School, a school in Illinois, and did a great job. And he is one of the most humble, hardworking kids that I've ever coached in over 20 years, and wants to do a lot for not just his family but his country. And he's going to be a leader. He's going to be a very good man in the future.
No, I love him. I love him on and off the court. Hey, we talked about the backcourt being gone, and this was the big question mark you had. We mentioned 5 possible replacements. One guy that has absolutely stepped up is Troy Green.
Right.
Talk about his progression.
Well, Troy's from East St. John, prepped at East St. John High School, and from the big metro area of Larose, Louisiana.
There it is.
And he's done a tremendous job this offseason. Really had a big jump. St. Rose, I'm sorry.
Larose is a little further south.
And really has made a huge jump in the last 5 games. Has really come into his own. He plays so hard and has been very unselfish in how he's approached the game and how he's going. I think for a freshman, he's going to be in the mix as this season progresses if he can hold serve to be in the mix for Freshman of the Year for our league.
Wow, that good.
Yeah.
What about what about the other guys playing guard position?
Lamont Brissett, obviously a guy that you've had on the show from Landry Walker, was a winner on the gridiron and on the court.
State champs in both.
And state champs in both. Has done a great job giving us a big punch off the bench. And Bryson Robinson has emerged and playing good at point guard as a sophomore, really shooting the ball well. Ezekiel Charles, a junior college transfer from Brooklyn, New York, whose team is actually playing in the Sugar Bowl Classic this week, Lincoln High School.
Oh, wow, okay.
From Coney Island. And so I know he's excited about that. But it's a huge opportunity for those guys to continue to grow and continue to step up, along with our other seniors, Giles and Zeno.
And I noticed that Scott Plaisance is one of your leading scorers. He's a Country Day guy. Went to UL, was a Raging Cajun, transferred over. There he is, number 55. Talk about what he provides.
Well, Scott's done a great job. He got eligible right after finals finish as a mid-year transfer and has come in and just been a great spark plug for us. We knew he could score. I think we've put him in positions where he could score the ball easily and well. But he's a very good foul shooter, prepped under great coaching Mike McGuire.
Oh, yeah.
Who does a tremendous job.
I played against Mike McGuire. He's good.
And so he's done a great job, and I think he'll continue to develop and get more and more comfortable as the season progresses. And then next year, obviously, he's got to be an anchor for us inside and be really, really good next year with the losses of Thibodeau and Poe.
I forgot, you mentioned Michael Zeno, but did he get hurt or something? I mean, because I've only seen a couple of games that he's played. What happened?
Yeah, no, he's doing well. He's just in the mix and the rotation. He's doing fine.
Okay.
He's coming on and had a big week of practice this week, and we're anxious to see what he can do.
I'm anxious
coming
too.
into it.
So tell people a good reason to come out and watch the team. I'm going to tell you what, if you want great basketball to watch, I mean, well coached, plays basketball the right way, it's there. But you as the coach, tell people to get out there and how to do it.
It's the most entertaining minute for the dollar in Louisiana and in New Orleans. You can get in, free parking, come right into Lakefront Arena. That's going to be a perfect basketball spot. You're going to see a great game and a bunch of different styles of play. But Wednesday night is a heavyweight match. I mean, it's the two of the top teams in our league going head-to-head Wednesday night. It's a big one.
The chance to go 3-0. By the way, that is impressive. You have not been in first place since really the 2016 season. Yeah,
I'll take it.
17, and now we're in 18. That's crazy. By the way, the weather outside might be frightful, but it's going to be so delightful inside. Check it out at Lakefront Arena. You probably have a million of these. A frequent guest, Mark Slessinger.
Thank you so much.
I always appreciate you, man. In season. You don't get D1 coaches in season. That's what separates my man right here. I appreciate him. Hey, we're going to continue having in-season coaches. Like I said, coaches from around the state. I've talked to a bunch of them. They want to come down and be on the show, talk about their programs and what's going on. Basketball down here in South Louisiana and the Gulf South region is just getting bigger and better and better. Hey, great show. I want to thank John Brady for coming down. He's the former Final Four coach. You remember him at LSU, now the LSU broadcaster, and first time ever TV appearance for Bryan Bienemy. Did a fantastic job. I want to thank everybody around. I know I've been sick. I know Redhead Tsunami's sick. Prayers for her and everybody else. And Will Hill, man, incredible job today. Naila, just a stud. Alex, Peter Drennan, I want to thank everybody out there from CST and WLE. We'll see you next week on Primetime Sports. Happy New Year.